Thanks for joining us today. So I'm going to talk about scripting, which means some of you may or may not be interested in it. So if you do want to duck away for a little bit, you could if you're not one of the developers. But do try to be back by 4. That's when we're going to start the open mic session. So I'm sure I'll be done by then. Being a developer, I like development to be easy. So this year I decided to add some features that made the development environment for scripting easier. And basically, we're still using some of the same tools that we've used in the past, but I more tightly integrated the communication between the tools in DP2. So I'm not going to spend too much time really in these slides. However, the slides are actually built into version 22 of the product. So if you go to Programmer's Assistant, and many of you have seen this best practices button down here, this is the one that gives you a PDF on how to customize DP2 and so on. So this year I added one more to cover all the things that I'm going to cover in this session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to DP2. And we will continue from here. Okay, so first of all, Programmer Assistant, and those were the 2 buttons. They do open up in whatever a PDF opens up on your system. Usually probably going to be a browser. So the method of integrating DP2 with these products is basically just clicking on this button. And we've had this button for a while, but it now does a lot more than it did before. And furthermore, I learned that Notepad over the year changed the location of some of the files that we create. So you're going to want to, when you get our new version, version 22, you're going to want to do this again. In fact, anytime you take a new DP2, I would recommend that you come in and click this button. And the reason is that all the information that we pass over to Notepad about the KPL language actually comes from DP2. It's not something that's created on the side. It actually asks the DP2 engine, you know, what are all your objects and your functions and your keywords and all that kind of stuff, and generates the files. So it'd be a good idea on any new version to do this. Also, I would recommend that you get the latest version of Notepad++. Because of these changes they've made over time, I didn't have an easy way to make it work with various versions of Notepad++. So get the newest one, get the newest DP2, and press this button, and you'll be off and running. I will say one thing though, we do have to write one file into a location that's protected on recent versions of Windows, like Windows 10. So you're probably going to want to run DP2 as an administrator. You can right-click on DP2 and say Run as Administrator. That'll give us the permission to write to those directories. It's something in program files that we need to do. Okay, so let's jump right into some things here. I've already done the integration, by the way, so I'm not going to repeat that. You will want to, actually back on here, you will want to extract all the scripts. Most people know about this, people that have been customizing DP2, but that pulls scripts out of a script library and puts them into a folder called text files that allows you to view them and edit them and that kind of stuff. So I've also done that, which is why I've got in my text files folder a whole bunch of things. There are a few things in Notepad that we want to set up. Excuse me. Once again, it's allergy time for me. So I'll struggle a little bit here, but under settings, we have some preferences. Once again, these are in the PDF, so you don't have to worry too much about it. But under auto completion, it'll probably be off. So you'll want to come in and turn it on, and in the PowerPoint, it'll show you the settings that you want there. We also use one plugin, but most of the plugins you can find in the plugin administrator, and you can just select them and install them. But there is one that we use that's not in there, which is Snippet Plus, and that's the one that we'll go over this in a few minutes, but it's got code examples so you don't have to type stuff out. That you actually will have to go out and get from the site. You'll be looking for you'll be looking for some stuff here that gives you information on where to go to get Notepad and that kind of thing. So it'll all be in the PDF for you. Now, one of the first changes we made was I took this section here, our reference section, and let's see, let's go to examples, Windows, HTML. So this has got some code. This has been in here before, but we have this Notepad++ button. So now something that was in the reference database, if you click on it, will actually show up in Notepad++. Now I usually use multiple monitors. So normally this window would be on a different monitor. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to use a feature they have called Always on Top, which will keep this thing on top even when I click on DP2. So we'll have a little bit of looking at both at once. Generally, I would recommend a developer to have a second monitor. I think it's more productive to do it that way. So we took the thing that was in the database and we wrote it out to disk so it could be opened up in Notepad, and this is the path that it's at. Right now, it doesn't look very smart. It doesn't know what language it is, but that act of doing the DP2 integration with Notepad produced this entry. So as soon as you select that, it now recognizes our keywords, our functions, our reserved words, and all that kind of stuff, and it color codes them. So you can see that built-in functions become red, built-in objects become magenta, comments are green, that kind of stuff. It also does support the other type of comments that we have. You know, we can have multi-line comments. You know, we're using this old style. And most people don't know it, but as a carryover from the Mac version, this is also a comment. So they turn out green too. Now, in addition to the color coding, it also knows about our keywords. So if I start typing something, like I just typed a P, actually, if we're going to do our keywords first, I'll do one, you know, iFile. So you can see as I started typing, I was able to select the one I want, and it puts the parameters out there. Back here's auto crop. Oops. So it knows that there's 6 parameters for auto crop. Of course, you have to potentially fill in those. So those are the keywords. It also knows all our built-in functions. You know, key state's a built-in function, and when you type the left paren, it shows you that it returns a numeric value. And we don't tell you what the parameters are yet. I'll have to look into doing that. It'd be a fair amount of work to do, but it would be good to be able to tell you the parameters. But I'll show you a trick in a minute to solve that problem. Actually, I'll show you that trick right now. Well, no, I'll show you in a minute. So I'll take that back out. In addition to color coding and auto completion, actually, in addition to the words that we've built in, I just wanted to mention that it also knows words that are in the script. So down here, like as a variable window width, this is something that Notepad++ does all by itself, not because I did anything. But if I start to type window width or whatever, you know, it will actually look through the document and find other things. So most professional development environments have this type of auto completion. And if you do use Notepad and do the integration, you'll be able to kind of approximate that type of thing. Another thing that you're going to want to do is use their workspaces. So a workspace can be anything you want. You can create your own workspaces and put any files you want. But if you want to do it the easy way, you say that you want to choose a certain folder. And I'm going to choose Eastman Kodak. Come on, Eastman Kodak. The KPDP2 folder. So now right in Notepad++, I've got essentially everything that's in the KPDP2 folder. Now I just did that for my local DP2, and I'm running standalone, but normally you're going to have a server version. So you could actually do this again. You could come in and do another open folder as workspace, and you could go out to the KPDP2 that's out on your server, and now you'd actually have both of them right here. Because lots of times when you're developing, you're switching back and forth between local and shared versions of stuff. So it's very convenient to have that. Now I was mentioning before that, you know, I could type a function and it would start to fill it in for me. And once I got to here, you know, it says, well, you need some parameters. So what are those parameters? Well, one thing you can do is just kind of highlight it, and you can come over here, and inside one of their workspaces, you can right click and say find in files. And I would recommend that you set up these filters to be star.txt and star.kpl. Those are generally the things that we have, scripts, the extensions we have for scripts. But then you do find all, and sure enough, down at the bottom, you come up with a list of things. So you can see pretty quickly that it's things like shift and control and alt. So this is a function that tells you whether a certain key is pressed, like whether the alt key is being held down while you type another key, or a shift key or control key. So that's the way I would recommend proceeding, and, you know, trying to find out what are some of the different arguments. Now functions built-in objects are kind of the same. They come out a slightly different color. This is what creates a record set from the database. It's a little bit smarter. It knows that the first parameter has to be an object name, but it still doesn't know about the other parameters. So oftentimes, you know, we'll type in list, and then a bunch of parameters after that. Once again, if you don't know, just highlight it, come over here, find in files, and you'll end up with a bunch of examples that you can choose from. Another interesting thing is we've added a bunch of menu commands that also have hotkeys, by the way, that let you do different things. So I can actually develop right here from Notepad because I have this launch in DP2, Control-Alt-Shift-D. So I'm going to type Control-Alt-Shift-D. Oops, it's going to be behind here. Put this away for a little while. Do that again. So this is just a little sample script that shows you how to bring up an HTML window. And when the window loads, it puts out a little message and has a little go button. And when you press the go button, it changes hello world to hello somebody. So I can actually sit here in Notepad++ as my development environment and make some changes. You know, I could just come in here and say hello big world or something like that, and I would get hello big world over there. Or maybe I'd want to change some things about the styling of the page. Give that another try, and up you come. So that's like a lot of development environments where you can just sit there in the environment and actually run the program that you're writing and building and so on. Of course, with our stuff, there's no compilation required. Everything we have, whether it's a KPL script or a C script or HTML or JavaScript, all that stuff is all interpreted. So there's never ever a compile step. You can actually see that in our little example here, this is the HTML for it. And we do have places for you to put JavaScript in there for JavaScript handlers. And we also have jQuery, which I know many people probably use if they're doing HTML type work. So you can just simply include jQuery, and this is a jQuery onload handler, that type of stuff. So it's pretty easy to create your own user interface if you understand HTML and JavaScript. You can still use all the DP2 built-in ways if you want to, but you'll find a lot of the UIs that we write now are actually done in HTML because they're just more powerful. The top part of this little guy is actually the HTML that goes in the window, and the bottom part of this guy is actually what puts up the window. So what else can we do? Well, for one thing, this seems to have a lot of little routines in it that came from this class called base HTML. That's why we're able to put up a window with so little code here. It's using a class that it derives from, and so many other routines are in this base HTML that are doing most of the heavy lifting. So I'd like to see what's in this particular thing. So I can select it, and I can either use the hotkey, or I could say Control-Alt-Shift-N for include, and all of a sudden base HTML opens, and this is full of all the routines that are in there. Now, one thing I don't like is that when we do those kind of things, it doesn't seem to recognize that this is KPL. So you get forced to going up and sometimes reselecting. That's something I wish they would fix. It's not anything we can do anything about. On the other hand, it is smart enough that if you select a file in here, it knows that both .text files and .kpl files should be treated as the KPL language, and it will go ahead and color code them and so on. But when we do these little tricks where DP2 actually does something and talks back to Notepad++, it just doesn't seem to have that capability. So let's see, so I got a couple extra things open here. So we just opened base HTML, and sure enough, it opens some files too. It includes files. Seems to include things from like utility routines. Now, we don't even have the full path or anything to it, but sure enough, if you go up here and say open include file, it talked back to DP2, and DP2 knew where all the interesting things were. So it actually found this in the text files. So that file was originally in the text library. We pulled it out into the text files, and we found it there. So that's a very handy way to get to some of the other files that your script may be using, or one of our scripts if you're working on one of our scripts. Another pretty cool feature, let's go back to this guy. You know, he's huge. He's full of a lot of stuff. It's almost kind of hard to know what's in there. But we added a new type of integration, and it looks like this. Actually, I'm going to probably expand this out a little bit. So this becomes a function list of all the functions, either methods or just regular functions that are not part of a class, all show up over here. And if you like double click on one, it jumps right to it. Conversely, if you're over here and you click someplace, that little bar goes to wherever it is. Now, this is such a long list. You know, how in the heck am I ever going to figure out what's in there? Well, one thing you can do is filter things down. So let's say I want to do something kind of like some kind of refresh thing. So I'm starting to type refresh, and it's starting to narrow down the number of functions in there that have anything to do with refresh. And hopefully I can look at one of these or several of these and figure out, oh yeah, this might be one I want to override in my script. So very handy tool, and you get to it from view function list. Now there is another feature that's a little bit like that, and it's the ability to fold and unfold the code that's in here. In fact, you can kind of see little operators here that if I wanted to fold this up, it kind of collapses it, so I don't have to look at some things that I'm not caring about at the moment, and I can open it back up. But there's also quite a few right-click options here that also have hotkeys associated with them. So like if I wanted to close them all at once, I could do Alt-0, and now I'm looking at just the headers for each one of these, and if this is the one I care about, I might open it up and play with it. So I'll be honest, I don't quite use that all that much. I really think this function list here is a better tool than this, because you just see more things in the window at once. So we've talked about some things that if we're starting in Notepad, we can do, but we can also go the other way. So I'm going to close up a few things here, and I'll get rid of this too. I'm going to just go ahead and dock this thing here so that I'm going to go back to DP2, and actually I'm going to turn this off also so that we can get all the way back. Let's say we're operating the other direction. I'm going to turn on the debugger, and I'm going to click on something, like I'll do lab jobs. So you can see right away it goes to on button in the taskbar dock. So that's the script that's controlling this little taskbar. And the handler for that one was on button with whatever was in the text that was there. And I can step into that. But I can also hit edit and jump right into Notepad++, right at the spot where I'm executing. Now that I'm here, maybe I would kind of like to follow along in Notepad++ while I'm debugging it. These are kind of small windows, and it's kind of hard to see some of this stuff. So if you move your mouse over step, I got to bring this to the front. Oops. Oh yeah, I better lock this baby down. So I'm going to do views, keep him in the front. But if I mouse over here, it's going to tell me if I hold down the right control key, I'll get to follow along in Notepad as I'm stepping through the debugger. So I'm going to hold down that right control, and I'm going to say step in. So right now we're in on button, and we're about to enter perform task. And all of a sudden now we're in perform task. If I look over here, sure enough, we're in perform task. As I start stepping along, Notepad++ starts stepping along at the same exact place that we are over here. And now one thing I'll point out is, let's say I had set the language here to KPL. So I'm seeing the color-coded stuff. Well, because this is a communication from DP2 back to Notepad++, watch what happens when I do another step. All of a sudden it loses its color coding. So this is something I hope they fix. It does work for the languages that they have predefined. but for what they call user-defined languages, which obviously KPL is, for some reason, they just don't have that working right. Now let's try something a little different. Actually, I'm going to make this a little bigger. Actually, I'm going to start it over. I'll stop this and we'll just do this again real quick. So this time, that didn't really, there we go. We also don't need this anymore. So this time I'm going to step in. So once again, oops, I did a step. I screwed that up. I just stepped over the whole thing. So I'm going to do step in. So here I am at getting ready to perform task. So it is kind of nice that I can see what's in this window and I can see the whole file over here. But I'd like to be able to see some of these things down here. We've got pretty small windows and you got to scroll around to find out all these kind of things. If I hold down the shift key at the same time, I now get two. I can see I have a little problem here. We'll ignore that for a minute. That is the same thing that's right here, but for some reason that call stack is not correct. That might be something I have to fix before I ship. But what I am seeing now is I'm seeing this pane right up here, and I'm seeing this pane, which was full of all the variables, down here. And as I continue to step through it, actually what I'd like to do at this point is I don't want to have to go back and forth between these two all the time. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to move it to another view. So now
Tom, I just want to interrupt you briefly. You do have a question out there. If all your files used a .kpl extension, that wouldn't be a problem, would it?
I wish that was true. So first of all, I had to tell Notepad about the KPL extension. And I also told it the .text was the KPL extension. But in their API, when we're communicating to them from KPL or from DP2, they, for some reason, do not respect that. I can go back up here, and select it again and get it back. Oops, I did it on the wrong side. But I do wish that what you were saying was true, but it's not. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift, and I'm going to hit Step. So now notice what's happening is I'm moving through here, but I'm also seeing all these variables change at the same time. So that's a very handy way, I think, to, especially if you're trying to figure out what our code is doing. And we have lots of code and you're stepping through lots of stuff. Sometimes I think it's going to be better for you to see it in the big picture here, than it will in the tiny panes that we have in this section. Did not know about single step. I'm just reading the questions real quick. Larry Crute wants to know if this works with C scripts also. I actually don't know the answer to that question. I'll have to try that. It might because, well, certainly the syntax highlighting it, you wouldn't choose KPL. You would choose C or C++, which I currently have disabled in here. But I disabled it on purpose, so you don't have to do that. In fact, if you don't go in and disable it, this will be a huge long list of probably 40 different languages. So if you wanted the syntax highlighting for C, that's already built in. I'm not sure about the stepping though, whether the stepping would actually step through both at once. Good question though. Let's just try one other one here because I'm surprised that I'm seeing that stack problem. So we're going to get rid of this. And I'm just going to jump back to Programmer Assistant real quick. Let's take one that, oops, forgot to turn off the debugger. We'll just take one real quick that's got multiple levels to it. I'll say debug on that, and I'll step in. Yeah, so this one so far is working correctly. My stack, I'm in one level. I called test one, so I see test one over here. And if let's step a couple more and step in. Yep. So now the stack is correct. I'm not looking at this thing's up here at the same time. Let's just do a move. Forgot where that was. View. Anybody see it? Actually, this is the one I want to do. Where's move to clone or move to other view? I lost it. That's all right. It's not critical for what we're doing at the moment. So it does look like now that if I that this stack is correct. So I'm not sure what was wrong with that other one. I'm going to take a look at it, but you should normally be seeing the stack just as you do down here, and it should be correct. Okay. By the way, you can also open the session log from over here. So that'll went off and talked to DP2 to figure out what the right session log was, and this is showing some of the things that was in the session log along the way. And then the last one is kind of interesting too. Usually when you modify DP2, we ask you to do it as a script override so that when you upgrade, we don't clobber all your changes with a new version of stuff from DP2. So we've spent quite a few years talking about script overrides and so on. I'm not going to go into a great deal on them, but I did set this up so that, let's close this up again. Let's say we were wanting to make a change in here. In fact, let's decide what that change is. We're going to, Pat showed you this today. Oops, got a little heavy with the mouse. She showed you this little thing that brings up this window. Of course, in her case, the window is too small for some reason. I'm not sure why, but so let's put a hotkey on that so that we don't have to do all this drilling type of stuff. And let's go through the process of doing a script override and even the process of how would we come up with what to do. So the first thing I want to do is I want to figure out how to open up that, the dialog from the right click. So that's pretty easy. I think I've showed many of you how to do this before. Oops. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go over to 36 pics and come down to here. And sure enough, it opens up an images doc and it's got this open 36 pics thing. So I know that's what I'm going to need in my script override. Actually, I'll just put it maybe in my copy buffer. But now I would like a Notepad to really help me out with this whole process. Let's get the debugger back off. We'll get you back in the front. So I lost my workspace because I closed it up, but I'm going to reopen it that way. I'm in text file, so we knew it was images doc. So here I am in images doc, and I want to add a script override to it. So what you can do is you can come up here and say, open DP2 script override. And it's telling me, first of all, it figured out I'm in images doc. So it wants to create the script override in the right place for images doc, and sure enough, it did. It's in scripts, script overrides, images doc. Now I don't currently have one, so it's asking me if I want to create it. If I did have one, it would just open it up. So here I have my script override. Now I'm kind of lazy. I'm a developer. Oops, what happened there? Did I go to the wrong spot? There we go. So I mentioned earlier, if you install Stimmit Plus, you will get some stuff that can really help you. And in my case, I'm writing a modification to one of an existing scripts. And if you've taken some of our previous courses, you know we have all these hooks in here to do that kind of thing. So I'm going to choose Keystroke Hook. And I'll get this out of the way right now. And this looks like it's a well-coded keystroke hook that does something. It looks to me like it puts up a message. You have selected count images. So let's try it. I'm gonna choose P as my key. So I'm gonna save this. I just did a Control S. And I'm gonna come back here again. I'm gonna do lab images. You always have to reopen it because it's a script override and the script was loaded at the beginning. So now if I come in here and I do this, it did not work. So what did I do wrong there? Make sure that that's saved. Make sure here, okay. All right, I'm either not thinking about this clearly or...
You put in a key hook. It's a letter P, right? Is that what you did?
Oh, yeah. Good man. Always handy to have Dave's. So that's not even what I want to demo. I want to demo that if I hit P, that I get my hook. So nothing's broken. The author just got a little confused here. All right, so now we know the hook works. So I'll bring this guy back over here again. But now I want it to do something different. You know, I don't want to just do something like that. So I still have this in my copy buffer. I'm not really going to need this stuff anymore. And really, because I don't have to pass anything to that particular routine, I can get rid of this code too, that's trying to figure out what images are selected. What this does is it tells DP2 that my handler handled that key. So I don't want DP2 to go on and try to handle the key after I'm done. So let's just try this real quick and I'll turn that off and we'll go back here. We'll reopen it. This time if I hit the P, I'll select a couple images. I should see what I was looking for and the fact that 2 images were selected. So that's a little example of using the features in here to make it easy to create the script override. So now I'm going to close that up. I'm back in Images doc. If I were to do this again, open DP2 script override, it's not going to try to create a new one. It's going to actually open the one that I've already got. Just looking real quick to see if there's any other questions. Okay, there's not. So, all right, another thing that goes right along with this is, you know, we just did this on the server. You might actually want to do this locally. Do it locally on your own box because the whole lab is running and you don't really want to be messing with people that, you know, are busy using DP2 normally. So most people know about this switch over here that says, if you turn that on, that we're going to get scripts from the local box rather than from the server. So when I'm creating a new script or creating a script override, you know, I would want to check this so that I can work on that script locally and not affect anybody else. So one thing we have that really help you, and I won't be able to show it because I'm running standalone, but if you go over to, let's see. So here I am over in script overrides. And you can see I have my images doc script override. So we actually have 3 buttons down here that integrate with WinMerge. WinMerge was another one of the programs that we suggested you install. So one thing it'll do is it'll compare the local file that you're working on with the one that's up in the shared area. Now, in my case, I don't have a shared area that's any different than my local area because I installed standalone. But if I did, then on one side I would see the shared area, and on the other side I would see my local version. So if I was working on a change to the existing hook that I already had, maybe I was going to make you have to press Alt P instead of P or something like that. Once I got that working, I could actually use the merge features here to move my changes directly over to the server. Or maybe I just want to look to make sure that it looks correct compared to what I used to have. If I didn't want to use the merge feature to move them over, I could actually use this button, which will copy that file over to the server. And if you ever need to, let's switch to classes here. If you're worried about all the stuff that's in a certain directory, this will bring up WinMerge and do a directory compare. Now, once again, everything's going to be identical for me, but if you really were comparing locally with the server, then you would see the differences. One side would show what was different from the other side. So those are two handy things to have for develop local and then push it out to your production server when you're ready. Okay, I'm running a little low on time, and I do have more slides, but I anticipated this. So you're going to see the slides when you get your new version of DP2. I'm going to cover one more topic because Pat brought it up, and I wanted to make sure that people understood. So she mentioned something about order roll frame, or roll and frame being longer in DP2 now. In fact, I think it was up to 120 characters or something like that. So that's not it entirely. I'm not sure exactly how she said it, but I remember wanting to point out that what we did is we changed all the internal buffers for DP2 to be able to buffer a lot more, but we didn't actually change anything in your database. So all your fields are still 31 or 32 characters, something like that. But I did put something in so that if you create a script override called field types, which many of you've already done this for changing other things. I put in two routines: update SQL char field length and change field types value. So what this will do is just with this one simple statement, it'll change the definition of frame inside field types inside DP2 just with that one call. And then that definition is used in 20 different tables. So by doing it this way, you're still going to have to change the database itself. You're going to go into SQL Manager and actually change the fields to be whatever length you want. But the process of telling DP2 about it becomes as simple as this. Just make this one call and give us whatever new length that you want. Here's another example of something. I wanted to change the disallowed chars. This is a list of which chars you can't type into the field. And I wanted to add one more to it, which was the vertical bar. So this gave me what the current disallowed chars were, and this added the vertical bar to it. But there's other attributes in there like the display name and stuff like that that you can change. So I just want to quickly point that out because I know we've talked to a fair number of people that are actually trying to bump up the size of the roll and frame field, largely because they store the file name in there, and photographers can send them some big file names. So I'm going to call it quits at this point and throw it open for any remaining questions. It's just about 4 o'clock, and we can either field a question about it right now, or if you don't think about it for a few more minutes, we can field the question in the open mic session.